10 months ago, I announced that I would be making a spiritual successor to the original Strike Force Heroes. I expected I'd get basically no attention for it, and I legitimately just set out to make that game for myself and my siblings to enjoy. I was very, very excited and exasperated when I realized how much attention I was getting. To the point I wasn't really prepared for it, and in a way, I kind of soiled it. I asked for everyone's help only to realize I was in no way capable or able to actually pull something together, and I would just have to end up making the game by myself. That being said, it was awesome to have a bit of a following, and it really pushed me on to learn and do some things I wouldn't have otherwise, most notably online multiplayer. I'm not usually pretty anxious about things, but making this game has been quite nerve-wracking, most notably releasing builds of it. Just with the last build, I had spent days working on modifying the netcode to be more reliable, only to end up seeing a Discord comment that talked about how the game was broken and they couldn't properly control their character. So you can only imagine how much anxiety I have right now releasing my final version of the game to all of you. The problem with calling this version my final one is it doesn't really deliver on everything I had promised or had hoped. The max lobby size is 4 instead of the expected 16. Single player content was completely gutted. The weapon and map selection is 1/3 of the original game, and the attention to detail is not even close to what Sky9 pulled off back in the day. But with all that said, I am very excited to show off what Strike Force Heroes Unification has in it, and go into more detail on what new additions I have made to the game. I don't feel like many people will object when I say that the medic class is the worst class to play as in the original Strike Force Heroes. The skill streaks were team-based in a campaign where 1/3 of the missions didn't even give you a team, and 2 of his passives are straight garbage. Them being his first passive, it's like Combat Mastery, and his other one, which was Regenerative Tissue. And I was actually kind of happy when I saw that the medic had been replaced by the engineer in Strike Force Heroes 2. However, now that I've had my own chance to take the original class and make my own adjustments to it, I am very pleased with its final result. So to start, the most important change I gave to the medic was a reason to use his team-based kill streaks while you don't have a team. What I did was I made it so that when you use Rapid Regen, or his new one which is Combat Stim, I'll get into that later, it now only takes 2 kills instead of 3. And when you combine this with his Charismatic skill, which reduces the cost of kill streaks by 1, a good medic can be stimmed or have regen for about 2/3 of the match, while by himself. So I'm going to get into each weapon kill streak and skill individually. So to start, we have the M4 here. I've already been using it a bit, and for all intents and purposes, I tried to make it about the same gun as in the original with a noticeably better accuracy. It was way too inaccurate before. The intended way to use the M4 is to stay at a range that your opponent's uncomfortable with. So if you're fighting a sniper, you want to get up close to it, and this gun is perfectly fine when you're up close. And when you are fighting someone with, say, a shotgun, or a commando with a closer range weapon, or someone who's holding out a Uzi for some reason, then stay far away, and it's still plenty good. It'll kill them in a reasonable time. The next weapon for the medic is the Needler. In past builds of the game, it was just a souped up version of the USP, where it had a fast fire rate, but high recoil. But now that role has been moved to another weapon that the medic has. The new role of the Needler is to being the marksman weapon of the game. It no longer has any recoil, and it now gets a 50% damage multiplier on headshots. This is a slightly old build of the game. In the newest version that I have that will be released, it has a slightly tighter accuracy than this, and it also actually has a 50% headshot multiplier. Moving on to the other option for an assault rifle for the medic, we have the G36. I decided to take the G36 to the shop and give it some improvements, and I bring you the new and improved scoped assault rifle. You'll notice that when you have it equipped, your camera zooms out farther. With a better zoom and a better accuracy than the M4, the G36 is a very nice alternative for when you're at longer range engagements. However, it can no longer hold its own in close range engagements. The last primary weapon for the medic is the 357. The 357 was one of my favorites in the original, and what it did, it shot wildly fast, but with an insane amount of recoil, in fact the most in the game. The 357 encourages you to get outside of the medic's comfort zone and get to close range, where its high DPS can really shine. The kill streaks in Strike Force Heroes 1 were a relatively weak part of the game. Every class had Surge, and Airstrike and Helicopter were both shared among them. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, a Strike Force Heroes Unification will have the same problem. But this time, Alpha Squad brought in the drilling missiles and the dimensional helicopters, meaning that even on a map like this, you can still use the airstrike and the helicopter. The first kill streak for the medic, along with all the other classes, is Surge. I'm not gonna lie, Surge is really boring. If I had more time, I would have not put it in. It gives you a 30% damage boost and gives you a 30% damage reduction. I think it's important to make Surge weak because it's a really boring kill streak. Okay, so the second kill streak for the medic is Rapid Regen. This is returning from the original. Since we're in a free-for-all and I have Charisma equipped, it only takes 1 kill. Rapid Regen functions the exact same as it did before. It gives you Rapid Regen. The third kill streak for the medic is Combat Stim. I wanted it to do Kevlar Vests, however it has a lot of overlap with Rapid Regen, and it would have taken more effort than you might think to implement. So instead I tried something new. A speed boost to your entire team, or by yourself if you're by yourself. While in a 2D game like Strike Force Heroes Unification, movement speed bonuses aren't as huge of a buff as they would be in a 3D game, they're still a lot of fun and do make it so that you can pick and choose your fights as you wish. Shotguns can get close, snipers can stay far, and it works very well with the medic because the medic's specialty is in fighting where the opponent is not comfortable. So if we're going to take the medic and compare his speed before and after activating the Combat Stim, which is given to his entire team, this is the base move speed. No character will ever move slower than this. However, when activated, he gets a noticeable and actually meaningful boost to his speed. And as mentioned, in a 2D game, I don't think it'll be as big of a deal, but it's still so much fun to have. So before moving on to the final kill streak, I'd like to give out a shout out to SG2's OP for Overpowered Strike Force Heroes mod, which rebalances the original Strike Force Heroes into a much more finely tuned and much more fun game. And one change I noticed in it was that the airstrike and helicopter kill streaks were shuffled around to the classes they fit on better. The airstrike kill streak went to the commando and sniper, who had less sustainability and thus want to fire off the kill streaks the moment they get them, and the helicopter kill streak was given to the medic and tank, who are more able to reliably stay alive and make use of the full duration of the helicopter. So I love that change and I implemented it into Strike Force Heroes Unification. This time the medic has a helicopter. So while you don't have Mr. Ravioli announcing the arrival of a helicopter anymore, you do have a helicopter that actually works. It can be used on indoor maps, it never misses unless if it hits a wall, and it follows you much better and circles around you. This time it's actually viable, and it also requires fewer kills to get. This helicopter is what it was supposed to be all along. The meta skills in the original Strike Force Heroes were just plain bad. Tiny buffs to stats, constant but incredibly weak health regen, an actually good skill, and the second most annoying skill to fight against in the later levels, the other being Blur. This time I made it so that the medic skills actually made the game a better game. Strike Force Heroes Unification already comes with a boost to health regen speed, and if you go for this skill, that boost is amplified even more. Regenerative Tissue is now always a solid choice, and gives the medic a large boost to survivability, so long as he's not under constant direct fire. Another returning skill is Charismatic. Charismatic has not been changed. Charismatic was, and always has been, a perfect skill. From Strike Force Heroes 2 comes Iron Grip. Strike Force Heroes Unification across the board has more extreme punishments to your accuracy, with noticeably higher recoil on most guns, and increased movement penalties, so I figured that Iron Grip would actually be a good skill to bring back. The firing penalty is still kept, however, mostly because of the 357. And what Iron Grip does, if you don't remember or never played Strike Force Heroes 2, is it makes it so that you don't get moving and jumping penalties to your accuracy, so it helps you stay accurate while on the move. This is an awesome skill for running and gunning. The last meta skill is Combat Bandages. This is my take on the self-revive from the original. Instead of instantly healing you for 50% every 30 seconds, which made it frustrating to use on both ends, if an enemy used it, they just got a free win in a fight, and if you used it, every 30 seconds was such a harsh cooldown that it wasn't even worth using. So now, what Combat Bandages does is it heals you for a percentage of your health over the course of 2 or 3 seconds every 10 or 15 seconds. I don't know the specific numbers that I put in. I'm happy with what it is though, leading to more reliable healing but less frustrating moments for whoever isn't the medic. This build actually has a bug where on one player's screen it doesn't work, but this is fixed in the new one, and you'll see it gives some major health regen. The Assassin is the hardest class in the game to balance, and it shows. Every single Strike Force Heroes game, the Assassin reigned king. I did have to tone back the Assassin a little bit, mostly in the fire rate and ammo, but honestly not much. One really big reason the Assassin was overpowered before was just because you were fighting bots the whole time. They were too stupid to properly fight him. They had a very specific aggro range, and the Assassin was the best class for staying outside of it. So they would just sit there and let you headshot them with no retaliation. In a multiplayer environment, the Assassin has to earn his kills a little more. The first weapon for the Assassin is the Scout. The Scout is the best mix of accuracy and fire rate out of all the snipers that he has, and instead of this being at the cost of his damage, it's instead at the cost of not having a scope. And this is actually the same way it was in the original. And because of its faster fire rate, if the Scout misses, he can still go for a headshot and win the fight, so long as he's still alive, and he usually will be. The next weapon for the Assassin is the Combat Knife. In the original Strike Force Heroes, melee weapons were so abysmal, and going for them was just a joke. In Strike Force Heroes Unification, the Combat Knife is now much more viable. While its time to kill is honestly about the same, it's still really fast. The lack of damage was not why the melee weapons were bad. It is because you had to get close to the enemy without being killed, and the Assassin has so little health that he would get killed, especially by bots. In Strike Force Heroes Unification, the Combat Knife is actually the only melee weapon, and has been buffed in a few areas. The biggest buff is just a multiplayer environment. People do not have the reaction times of a bot. They won't instantly turn and shoot and kill you on sight. The other major buff for the Combat Knife is a speed bonus. So if you compare holding out the pistol here, I mean it takes an average amount of time to get across here. No character ever moves slower than this. But if I switch to the Combat Knife, there's a noticeable speed boost. With many ways to increase your speed, especially if you have a good medic with combat stim on your team, you can zoom with this boy. Also, here's a really good tip for using the knife. Use the secondary weapon too. If they're too far away from you, or if getting in close isn't viable, like they have a shotgun, whip out the secondary. The next weapon is my favorite sniper from the originals, the Barrett. It had an insane fire rate at the cost of accuracy, and it still also had a scope, even though it was too inaccurate to make good use of it. So I kept it about as close as I could get it to. Anyone who played the original should know that the Barrett is so much fun to use. You just blast people away. The final weapon I have for the Assassin is the Op. No gimmicks with this one. It is a sniper and everything you want in a sniper. The first kill streak for the Assassin is Surge. Moving on, we have the Smoke Bomb. So I took a note from SG2 and made it so that the Smoke Bomb only requires one kill this time. SG2 is a freaking genius. It's so much fun to have one kill smoke bombs. Use it to get out of a bad situation, or my favorite, just whenever you get bored and want to kill someone. Sometimes smoke bombs do that. But yeah, the smoke bomb will teleport you to a random location on the map. Have at it. The third kill streak for the assassin is a returning one. It is the battle scan. When you use it, enemies show up on your minimap. This time it doesn't reveal invisible enemies, and it doesn't come with a 50% damage boost. But if you're in a free-for-all, it takes one less kill to get, just like the medic skills. The final kill streak for the assassin is the airstrike, which is largely unchanged. You get some kills, and you can use it inside this time. You activate it, nukes the whole map, you're gonna get a kill. The assassin skills are definitely the ones I had the most fun making. First off is Overkill. This one comes from Strike Force Heroes 2, and what it does is, if you hit a killing blow on someone, any extra damage will leak over to your next shot. This really encourages the assassin to get kill steals and headshots. So if I were to blast that guy, and if I just hit him with a pistol, all the extra damage from that headshot carries over, and it one-shots him. Wow. The problem with this skill is that it only rewards you if you win your first fight of your life. The second skill for the assassin is Shadow Blend, which allows you to go invisible whenever you crouch. The skill is also largely unchanged. It still gives a 50% damage boost to melee weapons. Just make sure you don't play with anyone who screen cheats. This is a much more fun skill in a multiplayer environment. People move around a lot more. And it's also just fun knowing that you just did this to a real person. There we go. The assassin's third skill is Focus Shot, which comes from Strike Force Heroes 2. This one is also largely unchanged, giving a 30% damage boost after not shooting for a moment. In Strike Force Heroes 2, it was 1 second, however, I increased it to 2 seconds. This skill works really well when you get body shot with a sniper, and then immediately switch to your secondary, unless if you're using the op and body shot a medic, which is enough to one-shot them. The assassin's fourth skill is a new one, Unencumbered. What it does is it gets rid of your secondary weapon, but because you don't have a second gun and are no longer unencumbered, you get a boost to your speed now. This one's about 25%. And it works really well if you combine it with a combat knife. This is the best way to get kills with a combat knife, other than Shadow Blend. It allows for a comically aggressive playstyle, where you just run around the map and get as many kills as possible until you come across someone with a shotgun. Before I move on, you might notice Blur is not present. This is because Blur is bad and annoying and frustrating and bad. I don't like to fight assassins that use Blur. You don't like to fight assassins that use Blur. Blur is gone. The Commando doesn't really have a significant history throughout the series. They changed his art style a ton in the second game, but gameplay-wise, they nailed him from the start. The Commando offers the most firepower of any class, with machine gun bullet hoses and devastating rocket launchers. While Strike Force Heroes 2 and 3 really seemed to lean into that, Strike Force Heroes 1 didn't as much, giving him more utility options than his skills and kill streaks. I like utility options over power options, but there are still power options. Since I'm on the topic of kill streaks, I'll go over the two unique kill streaks for the Commando. It's Tear Gas and Bouncing Betty. Surge and Airstrike are shared with other classes. The first kill streak is the Tear Gas. It always felt like the player is missing out, since when the enemies use it, your screen goes green, but when you use it, the enemies just get worse. You don't really get to take much advantage of it. It just really reduces the difficulty of them. It was really boring to use for yourself, but it was a really cool concept. So now it's a multiplayer environment. The only effect is green. If I were to use it, their whole screen is green, and usernames will not appear. They do in this build. The other kill streak is the Bouncing Betty, which you can no longer crouch under to avoid. I did this because it would just lead to players putting it in spots that you can't crouch around. Instead, I made it so that so long as you're at max health, it will not kill you. It will leave you with just a tiny bit of health left. It will always take it down to 20 unless if you're the tank. The tank, it caps out at about 170. I believe this is a much more interactive way to go about balancing the Bouncing Betty, even though it's kind of hard to balance. I didn't want the Bouncing Betty to just turn into a game of reaction speed, where you try to trigger it and then backpedal out of its range, which ends up being annoying for both players. The commando gets his kill streak weighted and the enemy's time gets wasted. First off is the saw. So the saw is a light machine gun, and while it's very similar to the Medic's M4, you'll note it has noticeably less range. At having a higher DPS and a much higher magazine, you won't run out of ammo with this gun. Moving on, the next weapon for the commando is the RPG. The RPG was cool in the original, but I just could not stand how inaccurate it was, so this time it practically gets perfect accuracy and a much faster zoom speed. This comes at a nerf to damage though. It doesn't reliably one-shot any class but the assassin. Switch to your secondary, you'll be fine. And that's a general theme I have with Strike Force Heroes Unification, is making it so that secondaries, while not part of the big game plan, are still a very useful part of your loadout, and not just ignored half the time. The third weapon for the commando is the minigun. The minigun will be mostly unchanged from the originals, to the best of my ability. However, there is one very noticeable change. Walls don't screw you over as much now. Say someone was up there, while it was in line of sight of your character, it wasn't in the line of sight of your minigun. You notice that the minigun was just able to shoot up there though, without hitting the boxes there. And this is because of a change to the game mechanics. What happens is every time you shoot, an invisible ray is shot out from the center of the player, then it draws a fake bullet from the gun barrel to the point that the invisible ray hits. It's a really common practice in shooter games. So basically what I'm trying to say is the minigun doesn't lie anymore, and you don't have to aim above the opponent anymore. The final weapon for the commando is my favorite grenade launcher, the Thumper. It's really simple. It's a 2-shot sticky grenade. Just go bop bop and they may as well be dead. The catch is, with such a fast technical time to kill, it takes a full second for those grenades to explode, so you gotta find a safe spot. The commando was by far the hardest class to come up with skills for. His skills have always been lackluster, so I didn't have much to pull from the games. I hate skills that only work with a specific type of weapon, and the commando was the flagship character for that. If you use a rocket launcher, you go for the explosive resistance. If you use a minigun or a machine gun, you go for the infinite ammo. So I actually have 2 new skills for it, but first we'll go over the ones that already exist. The first one is Scavenger. A Scavenger, when you get a kill, you get ammo. This basically means that you'll have infinite ammo, so long as you don't intentionally waste a ton of bullets. The next skill is Martyrdom, which this time no longer has a cooldown. So if you get killed, you take the medic down with you. Actually, no you don't. I nerfed the damage. It doesn't one-shot any class other than the assassin. One-shots are really risky, and I don't want to make the game imbalanced. The fourth available skill for the commando actually comes from Strike Force Heroes 3. What it does, I forget the name, just look it up on the Strike Force Heroes wiki. So what it does is, when you're below a certain threshold of health, you get a damage boost. It works, actually gives you a pretty good reason to use Surge. If you combine that with Surge, you can get some mean stuff going. So I gotta say, I really like this fourth one. The fourth available skill for the commando is Combat Drugs, for a 50% reduction in max health, which takes you down to a medic amount of health, and the removal of natural regeneration, so if I were to shoot him a little, he's not going to regenerate that health. He gets a 25% speed boost. This is for when you, similar to Martyrdom, this is for when you give up on winning and mostly just want to mess with people. The extra speed is so noticeable and it's so much fun. I love being able to move this fast. I wouldn't want to give it to everyone though. it'd be a little too fast paced. The tank was the first class I played all the way back in 2011. He was immediately my favorite. Nowadays I don't really have a favorite class. I enjoy all of them. My favorite iteration of the tank is still the Strike vs. Heroes 1 tank though, and it's because of shields. Shields are way cooler than elemental guns. But it makes a lot of sense why they were removed. Let's face it, Strike vs. Heroes was always a single player game, and part of its appeal, on top of the loadouts and top-notch art and attention to detail, was the power trip it gave you. The shields kill that power trip. Especially when you were using it, shields felt like the most worthless pieces of garbage. They demolished your accuracy and DPS and would just make you pray that the AI would move towards you and not have a shotgun. They were a fun concept that fit the tank really well, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss them a little when they were removed. And once I get to the shield, I'll go more into why I decided to bring it back. First, I'd like to talk about the Divider. It's the tank's first primary gun. It's everything you expect in a shotgun. Awesome close range DPS, meaty sound effect. It's basic, and that's what I like about it. It's less similar to the M4, you just need it. So, okay, now for the shield. And surprisingly enough, the only change I had to make to it to make it fun for the player was not make it destroy your accuracy when you crouched. Now it just makes it so that crouching doesn't give you an accuracy buff. And actually, if you wanted to try it out in the original, after seeing this change in Strike vs. Heroes Unification, SG2, he went and changed it so that shields in OP Strike vs. Heroes don't destroy your accuracy and just leave your accuracy as it is. The Riot Shield is the only shield. It has a chance to reflect bullets and it reduces damage to you. That's about it. The third weapon for the tank is the Judgment, one of my favorites. It had tight spread, long range, and in the originals it actually didn't really have much of a trade-off. But in this, it has a much lower firing rate. But this is the tank's funnest primary gun for longer ranges, and actually makes it so that at medium ranges he's kind of tough to deal with. But yeah, at close ranges it's noticeably worse. The tight spread shotguns are one of my favorite weapon archetypes just in general. Like, I really loved the shotgun in the Judge in Valorant until they nerfed the heck out of it. Next is the Omar, the final gun for the tank, even in the original. This is the most extreme form of a shotgun. It barely has range, but nothing can survive 2 blasts from it point blank. And also has a sick reload animation. At least I think it's sick. I put a lot of work into that. The biggest drawback, other than the range, is its ammo consumption. It only has a 2-bullet clip, which makes ammo packs less useful and limits how long you can keep this guy going. Moving on to kill streaks, the tank has some far better kill streak options than in the originals. No longer do you have to only go for the comically overpowered Ricochet, and no longer is there comically useless elemental auras. All we have now is perfect kill streaks, except for Surge. The second kill streak for the tank is Combustion, which has always been a staple of the series for no good reason. It was always horrible. And SG2 actually inspired me a lot, and his OP Strike vs. Heroes mod showed a really good way to balance it. He made it so that Combustion requires only 2 kills instead of 3, and instead of requiring the tank to come in contact with an enemy, now it's actually an aura. So if I find this medic again, I'll use it and show you. It covers an enormous area now and will set enemies on fire. You can also see when an enemy's on fire, both in particle effects and also in the elemental buildup on their health bar, which I will explain later. The third kill streak for the tank is not Ricochet. This is actually Bubble Shield. As I mentioned, the Ricochet was horribly overpowered, so this is my replacement for it, you could say. So I took some notes from Halo, specifically Halo 3, and made this little bubble. It blocks bullets from the outside and lets you shoot them from the inside. It doesn't last that long. Actually, it should already be over by now, but I haven't adjusted the duration. So it only requires one kill, but it doesn't last that long, so that it doesn't kill the pace of the game. This kill streak will likely be the one to shake up the game the most, and I hope that it's for the better. I hope you guys enjoy it. The final kill streak for the tank is the attack chopper, which I've already gone over. So onto the first skill for the tank, we have the adrenaline. The adrenaline was actually a really good idea in the original. So what it does is it massively increases your health regen rate. So if you let a tank live, his health will shoot back up so that he's ready for the next fight. The second skill for the tank is Iron Will. This was basically his trademark skill in the original, making it so that if he was hit by a large attack, he would take greatly reduced damage from it. So for a gun such as the assault rifle, it doesn't really do much. But say if he were to be fighting someone with an AWP, it saves his butt. What Iron Will does specifically is every few seconds, the next bullet that hits you basically deals no damage. This gives the tank one of the best ways in the game to deal with often devastating blows and popular one-shots that snipers and rocket launchers often have, while still having a clear-cut way of dealing it in the form of shooting the tank with a single bullet and then switching to the sniper. The third skill for the tank is Cold Steel, a new one I came up with. It turns all of his damage into cold damage, making it so that he's able to freeze enemies into position. And as you can see, it has a little circle there showing how much buildup you have, and once it's full, the opponent can no longer move. Specifically, if you want to know, it takes 100 damage at once, so it's not very useful against assassins or medics. But when you're fighting a commando or another tank, it's awesome. I love it. So the final skill for the tank, it was actually a nightmare coming up with one, so I decided that sometimes less is more. It just gives you plus 60 to your max health. You still get 2-shot by the Omar, but just barely. And when you combine it with a shield, you can be a tanky tank boy. So that's almost every loadout option in Strike Force Heroes Unification, besides the secondaries, and I like to say I'm quite proud of it. It doesn't have a large quantity, but it has a lot of quality. I feel like one of the best improvements I made to Strike Force Heroes Unification over the originals is the ability to change your loadout mid-match, in between every death. It makes it so that matches aren't nearly as boring, and it constantly switches up the battlefield and gives you a much larger variety match to match. Now onto the secondaries. I'll just skim over the USP and Uzi. They were in older builds of the game. The USP comes with high recoil and high damage, but is still generally accurate, especially if you crouch and don't move. The Uzi is the standard machine pistol, devastating at close range, but you're kind of being useless at any other. So now for the UMP, or the UMP, which is actually not a standard SMG this time. I got rid of the stock on it. I don't know, someone just wrote something on it. I was like, alright, fine, I'm not a wuss. So I changed it to a burst fire weapon. The damage is less than in this build, but I love the way it feels. This is your best option for long range. It comes with very little recoil and will really help the tank at longer ranges with the shield. This is definitely my favorite secondary that I made. I love the way it feels. The final secondary weapon is the Patriot, this time featuring incendiary rounds. It has an average bullet spread and range. The range is actually supposed to be less than that, sorry. Meaning that you also almost need to get a full clip of it off to make use of the incendiary ammo. It lights enemies on fire with the elemental build-up system that I made for this, which I think is a way better alternative to whatever the heck Strike Force Heroes 2 and 3 were trying to do. It's the only gun in the game that really feels like all or nothing, so if you don't expect to be able to regularly light opponents on fire, then I recommend using something else. The Strike Force series has always had top-notch maps, and I've always loved what the different maps bring. I tried to bring over as many of them as I could, but I will admit that I am disappointed in the final selection. The maps are even more basic in visuals than in the originals, and are completely demolished by the gorgeous scenery of Strike Force Heroes Remastered. Seriously, Strike Force Heroes Remastered looks so incredible, and I can't wait to play it when I come back. Moving on, Strike Force Heroes Unification features 3 different game modes. Free-for-all, Team Deathmatch, and Capture the Flag. With a limit of 4 people, I will have to admit that Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag don't quite reach the heights that they could, but they're still an option and a great way to balance out when you're playing with groups of friends where not everyone is on the same skill level. Now I will lay out some of the split screen and online features. Strike Force Heroes Unification is split into 2 main ways to experience it. Local split screen with controllers, or online multiplayer with mouse and keyboard and custom game lobbies. To start out, the local multiplayer is built to be as accessible as possible. The key feature is controller rebinding, allowing you to make whatever ghetto setup you want. Keyboard only? Go ahead. One controller controlling 2 players? Sure, if you're really desperate to play this game. Outside of controller rebinding, the options for the game are laid out for you very simply. How many players? I'll show off 4 players. And how will player 1 play? Mouse and keyboard. Then you select the map that you want, what game mode you want it, and what it takes to win, and what teams you want it with. Then you just go. And unfortunately, while you play by yourself, there's not much to do. Like, you can give yourself some people to shoot, I guess, but I unfortunately did not have time to make bots for this. So actually, the only option that isn't immediately presented is modifying teams in a free-for-all. If you'll probably notice that you can, and if you'd like, you can kind of create an alternative form of team deathmatch, where only the leading player's kills count, and friendly fire between teammates is still off. And next is the online component of Strike Force Heroes Unification, which you actually saw me using for the entirety of this video. It's more limited in options, but also more convenient. Online multiplayer has no split screen or controller support, but it lets you play with literally anyone in the world. I put a lot of energy and effort into making online player work as good as I can get it to. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that it will be perfect. Not even AAA games get that all the time. For the best experience, I recommend breeding a friend because it'll be hard to find other players, and if it's not too bad, could you please use the US West server to make it easier to find others, since I anticipate the online population to be small. Additionally, I strongly recommend that you go for shorter online matches rather than longer ones. This will make it so that when, in the event that a disconnect does happen, it's not as devastating. But this one also lays out the options pretty well. You can choose what server you want, but just do this one. You can give yourself a username, any username, and if you don't do one, then you'll just be labeled as a guest. Click change username 2 or 3 times for good measure. Click on connect to server. Any available lobbies will show up here. If I were to open up another Strike Force Heroes Unification, connect to the game, and then create a room, it will show up here. And you can join it and see all the players in the room and chat with them. So the host will have a little game setup screen. They can modify everything about the game, just as much as before. But because it's online, I have to sync it. I actually kind of had to remake this menu. But you'll see that it will automatically sync up to the other screens. And also, this one, these menus are designed for mouse and keyboard rather than the local menus, which are designed for controllers. And if you press start a game, it'll wait for it to load for all players. Which, you know, this is on one computer, so they both load at the same time, but you saw the waiting for player screen. It'll work best if you sync up the starts, but you don't need to. What happens if you don't sync up the starts is that the player skins won't show up properly, but after they respawn once, it'll be fine. And I guess I chose Team Deathmatch. Yeah. That's about all I have to show regarding Strike Force Heroes Unification, and I ask that you check out the in-game credits to see who helped me encourage me along. There's about half of it is actually filled up by Discord names, but I thought it'd be more fun, and they are definitely emphasized less than the others. This game never would have gotten to the state it is in if it weren't for the community pushing me to keep working on this. I actually felt like I was doing something meaningful, and I thank you guys for that. It was so much fun making this. So now for two important matters of discussion: what Sky9 is up to and why I'm leaving for 2 years. So first off, I'll talk about Sky9, and while this is old news, it doesn't help to let those who haven't heard it yet hear. Sky9 never died. They stopped making Flash games in 2015 or 16, yes, but they've been working just as hard as ever for the past few years. So between 2016 and 2019, they worked on A Knight's Quest, which if you've ever played Strike Force Heroes 3, you should be familiar with. It really tries to advertise it in it. And also, relatively recently, they announced Strike Force Heroes Remastered, which they say they're making as a way to cool off and take a step back from an even larger project they have in store. It's supposed to be a fast-paced multiplayer shooter. I don't know if it's 2D or 3D. I don't know anything about it. They did let me know a tiny bit early in an email, and then the day after posted it on Reddit. I recommend checking out some of the links I have below. The first is the trailer they dropped, and the other is their grand return in the form of a Reddit post. Also, if you're wondering what my feelings on Strike Force Heroes Remastered are, relative and concerning to my game, first off, I'd like to say I laughed out loud when I first saw the initial trailer. Like they say, play under the feet of giants and you'll get stepped on. When I saw that the split screen was a major feature of it, I couldn't be happier, honestly. I won't deny that Strike Force Heroes Remastered kinda stole some of my thunder, especially with it featuring split screen. But what I will deny is that I have anything but excitement for it. I am way happier with this universe where my game isn't the only Strike Force Heroes game to come out in 5 years. I would not like that kind of pressure. And also, like I said earlier, I initially set out on making Strike Force Heroes Unification for my own personal enjoyment to play with friends and family. So to have Sky9 actually make their own Strike Force Heroes with graphics and art direction of such a high caliber, I can't say I'm bothered by it. Also, in the few emails I had with those guys, specifically Justin, who gave me not only permission to make this fan game, but also their blessing in the form of a good luck and actually a tutorial or an explanation on how they made their AI work, I gotta say, they're really cool guys. So why am I leaving for 2 years? The shortest answer is because of my personal life. A short answer is because I'll be living in Korea to spread my religion and a religious mission. I live in Utah, so anyone who knows anything about Utah should immediately know what that religion is. The reason I'm avoiding being blunt about it is because I know you're all here for Strike Force Heroes, not for Celestial Salvation. So what will happen after I come back? Chances are for a good while, I'll just be going to college and further pursuing in my programming career. My dream job is to make video games, but for the next, so I'll be gone for 2 years and I'll be going to college for 6. Making games is gonna be a hobby and not a job. If there's still a major following for Strike Force Heroes Unification when I get back, I'll work on making updates for it. If there's not many people who are interested in it, and especially if I don't feel like doing it when I come back, I'll just move on to other passion projects. Thank you for watching until the end, and I really hope that you enjoy Strike Force Heroes Unification.